Welcome to the College Investor Audio Show, where we talk about the biggest issues impacting millennial money, from student loan debt to side hustles to building wealth. We will show you how to get out of debt so that you can build real wealth for the future.
Sticking it to the man. That's the topic today on the College Investor Audio Show. Kind of, in a roundabout way, just kind of how to claim tuition and fees deductions on your taxes in 2020. So when you're putting yourself or your child through college, saving money is so important. While cutting on basics is kind of tough, parents or students may qualify to save money on their taxes. The education tuition and fees deduction allows eligible taxpayers to deduct up to $4,000 from their income. That's pretty significant. Even though this deduction originally expired at the end of 2017, it has been extended through 2020. That means parents and students should check whether claiming the deduction lowers their tax bill this year. What is the education tuition and fees deduction, you might ask? Great question. The education and tuition deduction is an aptly named tax deduction. Taxpayers who pay for tuition or eligible expenses may qualify to deduct up to $4,000 from taxable income from their adjusted gross income. So when you lower your income through tax deductions, that helps you to pay less in taxes overall. The education tuition and fees deduction is an above-the-line deduction. So that means you don't need to itemize your tax return to claim the deduction. Saves on time and money too. If you have eligible expenses, the deduction allows you to lower your taxable income by $4,000. Assuming you have a 24% marginal tax rate, a $4,000 deduction is worth $960 in tax savings. That's nice. The education tuition and fees deduction is set to expire on December 31st, 2020. Now, let's talk about who is eligible for this deduction. It's available to people who paid for education expenses for themselves, a spouse, or maybe a dependent in the previous year. The eligible expenses include the cost of tuition, fees, books, and other required purchases. Transit costs and room and board expenses cannot be deducted. If you are claiming the deduction for a dependent, the dependent must be claimed on your tax return. The education deduction is only available to eligible taxpayers who meet certain income criteria. A single tax filer, for example, who earns an adjusted gross income less than $65,000 can claim the full $4,000 tax deduction. A single tax filer who earns up to $80,000 may claim up to $2,000 in deductions. Joint filers can claim the full $4,000 deduction if their income is below $130,000. Those with an income from $130,000 to $160,000 may claim up to $2,000 in deductions. So people who file as married filing separately may not take the tax deduction. Interesting. The question may arise now, can I claim the education deduction with other education credits? In addition to the tuition and fees tax deduction, the IRS offers education tax credits. You cannot claim the tuition and fees deduction if you or anyone else, important, claims the American Opportunity Credit or the Lifetime Learning Credit for this student in the tax year. However, families with multiple students in school may be eligible to claim a credit for one or more students while claiming the deduction for another student. Oh, now we're getting kind of confusing. So, figuring out the optimal tax claiming strategy could be a calculation nightmare. Thankfully, any tax filing software will make it easy to maximize the size of your refund based on the information you provide. Or, of course, if you have an accountant, CPA, they know what they're doing too. You might also ask, can I claim the deduction and take a distribution from a 529 savings plan? So the IRS doesn't allow any double dipping on this tax credit. Unfortunately, if you take the credit, you cannot pay for that credit with savings from the 529 plan. However, you can legally take a distribution and claim the deduction under certain circumstances. Let's talk about that circumstance. A student may have paid $13,000 in tuition and expenses in 2020. If she covered that with $9,000 from a 529 distribution and $4,000 of income or savings, the full $4,000 deduction can be claimed. If only $2,000 is paid out of pocket, then only $2,000 can be claimed as a deduction. Since 2020 is the last year for the education tax credit, parents and students who are currently enrolled may want to cover 2020 expenses with cash from savings while deferring 529 distributions to the future. Okay, now let's talk about the form. Of course, there's always a form involved when you take deductions. So to be eligible to claim it, you're going to need to receive a Form 1098-T from an educational institution. If you do not receive a Form 1098-T, you must be able to provide evidence that a student was enrolled in a higher education institution and that they incurred and paid for eligible expenses. You may want to keep receipts from textbooks or other purchases if you didn't buy the necessary items through your school. Okay, so now let's talk about some other education credits or deductions you should consider. Before even considering the tuition and fees deduction, you might want to look into a few other tax credits. Since tax credits directly lower your tax liability, it is always smart to look for tax credits before looking for tax deductions. Before taking the tuition and fees deduction, look into the American Opportunity Credit or the Lifetime Learning Credit for this student in the tax year. The American Opportunity Credit is specifically for undergrad students and their parents. It allows the payer to claim a dollar-for-dollar tax credit for the first $2,000 in eligible higher education expenses, such as tuition, books, and fees. You can also claim a credit for 25% of the next $2,000 in eligible expenses. The total credit is worth up to $2,500 for each undergrad student, and this credit can only be claimed up to 4 years. The Lifetime Learning Credit allows taxpayers to claim 20% of eligible expenses, tuition, books, and fees, up to $10,000 in expenses. Pretty good. This allows for a credit of up to $2,000. The $2,000 limit is applied no matter how many students are being claimed. Both credits are subject to income limitations, though. Because the American Opportunity Credit is so similar to the tuition and fees deduction, most undergrad students and parents will want to select the credit over the deduction. However, spouses who are putting themselves through graduate school or parents with multiple children in grad school might see the benefit of pairing the tuition and fees deduction with the Lifetime Learning Credit to maximize their refund. Boom! Again, if you have any questions about this, if you got lost I understand, check out thecollegeinvestor.com. We also have the links and the resources that you can find too right in the blog post. Just search for this. Type this in the search bar. How to claim tuition and fees deductions in 2020. And that's the show for today. Thanks so much for stopping by. Again, it's called thecollegeinvestor.com, and we'll talk to you again very soon.